Okay, so something happened this week that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. One of the biggest names in world soccer opened his mouth, said something about one of the most legendary careers in the sport's history, and within hours, American sports fans were losing their minds online. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. I'm not going to tell you what he said yet either. I just want you to sit with that for a second because trust me, by the time we get there, you're going to understand exactly why this blew up the way it did. Here's what I can tell you right now. This guy has had, without exaggeration, one of the wildest summers any athlete has had in years. We're talking record-breaking performances on the world's biggest stage, a level of fame that jumped completely outside his own sport, and a string of moments that had absolutely nothing to do with athletics, but somehow ended up everywhere online anyway. And then, right in the middle of all that noise, he says something that touches on the retirement of a guy who's basically considered soccer royalty. And that's when things got interesting. So, before I tell you who said what, stick with me. Hit subscribe if you haven't, because honestly, this story's still unfolding and I don't want you missing the next update. Okay, let's actually get into it. The guy we're talking about is Erling Haaland. And if that name means nothing to you, first of all, where have you been? And second of all, let me catch you up real quick because context matters a lot here. Haaland just led Norway to their first World Cup appearance in 28 years. 28. That's not a typo. He was scoring at an absolutely absurd rate the entire tournament. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he basically turned himself into a household name in the U.S., which for a soccer player is not an easy thing to do. Americans notoriously do not care about soccer the way the rest of the world does, and this guy cracked that wide open in like a month. And it wasn't just the goals. After he flew home to Oslo on July 11th, he brought back a taxidermied raccoon as a souvenir. I still don't fully understand that decision, but I respect the chaos. And instead of taking a breather after a tournament like that, he went straight to a Dolce & Gabbana fashion show in Italy with his girlfriend days later. So by the time we get to this whole Messi retirement comment situation, this guy's already been living in the headlines nonstop for weeks. Now here's where it gets good. Somewhere in the middle of all this press attention, Haaland got asked directly about Lionel Messi, arguably the greatest player of this entire generation, and whether he thinks Messi's career is winding down. And Haaland didn't dodge it. He didn't give some safe, boring, I respect him as a competitor answer that athletes usually hide behind. He actually said something real, something with an opinion in it, and that right there is exactly why this thing exploded the way it did. Think about it from the fans' perspective for a second. You've got Messi, a guy who basically redefined what it means to be great at this sport for almost 2 decades. And then you've got Haaland, this new generation phenom who's still relatively early in his career, weighing in publicly on what Messi's next chapter might look like. That's not a neutral topic. That's basically asking a rising heavyweight what he thinks about a legend's exit, and depending on how you phrase it, that can come off as respectful, or it can come off as a guy trying to plant a flag on the throne a little early. And honestly, a lot of fans read it as the second one. The reaction was immediate. Comment sections filled up almost instantly, and you could tell people were split right down the middle. A chunk of fans loved that Haaland actually said something with substance instead of the usual athlete speak. They were calling it refreshing, honest, exactly the kind of confidence you'd want from a guy who's clearly stepping into a new era of the sport. But then you had this other side, and honestly, I get where they're coming from too, that felt like commenting on Messi's retirement, even respectfully, felt a little premature coming from someone still building his own legacy. Like, let the man finish his career in peace before we start talking about what comes after him. And look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think Haaland said anything malicious here. From everything I've read, his comments actually sounded pretty respectful on the surface. But that's kind of the thing about moments like this. It's not always about what was literally said. It's about who said it, when they said it, and what it symbolizes to people watching. And symbolically, this hit different because it landed right in the middle of a summer where Haaland was already being treated like the face of the sport's next chapter. That's honestly the bigger story here, if you ask me. This isn't really about one quote. It's about timing. Haaland's currently in the middle of the most attention he's ever gotten in his career, the World Cup run, the raccoon thing, the fashion show appearances, all of it, and every single thing he says or does right now is getting magnified times 10 because of where he's at in this cultural moment. If he'd said the exact same thing about Messi 2 years ago, I genuinely don't think it makes a ripple. But right now, everything sticks. And American fans specifically reacted to this in a way that I think is worth talking about because soccer fandom in the US has this very particular relationship with legacy and greatness. A lot of American sports fans got introduced to serious international soccer through the Messi era. He is, for a huge chunk of newer fans over here, basically the definition of what greatness in this sport looks like. So when a new name, someone most casual American fans only really started paying attention to this summer, starts weighing in on that guy's career winding down, it touches a nerve. It's almost like watching someone comment on a legend's legacy before you've even fully processed that legend yourself. Some fans in the comments were pointing out that this whole thing says more about the state of the sport right now than it does about either player individually. We're genuinely at this transition point where an entire generation of legendary players, Messi included, are approaching the ends of their careers. And there's this new wave, Haaland very much included, that's stepping up right as that door starts closing. So comments like this were probably always going to happen eventually. Somebody was going to be the first to publicly acknowledge it. It just happened to be Haaland, and it happened to be right now in the middle of his own personal spotlight moment. Honestly, my take, I don't think this hurts Haaland at all long term. If anything, it just adds another layer to what's already been the most talked about summer of his career. This guy went from World Cup headlines to raccoon souvenir headlines to runway show headlines and now to Messi retirement headlines, all in the span of a few weeks. At some point, you have to just accept that whatever this guy touches right now turns into a story. That's just where he's at in his career. And whether you think his comments about Messi were respectful or a little too early, one thing's for sure, people are talking about it, which at the end of the day is exactly the kind of attention that keeps a player's name in headlines long after the actual tournament is over. So that's the story. Not some dramatic scandal, not some huge falling out, just one athlete giving an honest answer about another athlete's legacy at exactly the moment when the whole world happened to be watching him closest. Sometimes that's all it takes to blow something up online. If you got thoughts on this, whether you think Haaland was out of line or think people are overreacting, drop it in the comments. I actually want to hear both sides on this one. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and subscribe, because with the summer this guy's having, I genuinely don't think this is the last headline we're going to be talking about.